Demolition has begun in Detroit. No Pulisic in the top 100 players. And how are Inter Miami adding so many good players after winning the MLS Cup? That and more on Monday's edition of Morning Kick Around. Hello and welcome to the show. You found your way to Morning Kick Around, the show that dots the map of the American soccer landscape. Congratulations to those who have a job where you get this week off, and commiseration to the parents trying to figure out what to do with your kids. How's it going? My name is Robert Kerr, local soccer guy, and to my side, enjoying the sunshine in the tropics, radio soccer guy, Jason Davis. How you feeling?
Yeah, it's a tropical Christmas down here in Puerto Rico. Rob had spent my weekend exploring the center of the Puerto Rico, the island. So there's like mountains, tropical mountains, but still mountains. A very lovely time here in the Caribbean.
Did you do any adventuring? Did you get to do any zip lining or any like touristy stuff?
I don't know that I would do the zip lining, but no, that's not what we had a 4-year-old. It was a Christmas adventure. So we went to a little town called Jayuya in the middle of Puerto Rico. If you saw this word, you would struggle to pronounce it, Rob. And that's not me like saying that I wouldn't also when I originally saw the word. I did, but it's a nice little town in the mountains. They've got like a Christmas forest thing they do. Lots of lights and music and things like that. And we went to a couple of haciendas, which are, where they grow coffee. And then there's little cafes and brunch spots. So it was beautiful. If you follow me on Blue Sky, I posted some stuff last night because I was just enjoying myself so much.
That all sounds very nice. And I'm glad you didn't suggest Rob pronounces Puerto Rican place names as like bonus content or something for the day. I'm glad we're not doing that.
No, I think you just did. And I think that might be a thing. If we get 4 more members, can we make that a thing? Can we get Rob to pronounce Puerto Rico places with Jason? That would be amazing. I'd be in for that.
Yeah, we're keeping that behind the paywall for sure on this program. And shout out to our all of our MK Ultras and our subscribers out there. If you're watching right now and haven't hit subscribe, do so now. And shout out, we have George is our Spotlight member of the day. He is a great contributor to the online discourse, not only in these live shows, but in the MK Ultras Discord server. So shout out to George, aka Simply Dope, for being a big supporter of Morning Kick Around. And apparently I've put myself in the spotlight. If we're able to get 4 new members during this show, I'm going to be put to the test to get the coals under my feet and roasted for my Puerto Rican and Spanish pronunciation.
Since we're here already, I'm prepping for later in the show. But let me just put up, this is our dot the map, right? This is our ultras here on Morning Kick Around. All of our members become a member, become an ultra, get access to the Discord, become like George, who represents, I believe, North Carolina. I think he's down there, North or South Carolina. Rob can George can correct. I think it's South Carolina. That I think about it. I think this is George right here in Rock Hill, South Carolina. There you go. See, I got it right. So if we did this, we could just pull up the map and zoom in right here where Jason is currently located, the island of Puerto Rico, and we could go right. Look at that. What's right there, Rob, in the middle of the screen? Can you see that? I'm going to get as close as I can with it still showing the name. Can you see this? I know it's small. Can you see it right there?
Yeah. There's some J's and a few Y's in there. Yeah. It's my first attempt at a word I've never seen in my life before.
You did okay. You did okay.
So now that we have Puerto Rico like kind of in the spotlight there, what's the most unusual or unexpected place for people who don't know much about Puerto Rico? What is a place that is unlike someone's expectations?
I was just actually talking to my wife about this when we were in this little brunch spot in Jayuya, which is not only a town, it's kind of it's called a pueblo. It's also kind of like a county. So there's a bigger area called Jayuya, and then the town of Jayuya, right? So that's the town is the I can't remember the name, municipio. It maybe is the county kind of area, and then the town is the pueblo. So, but we were in one of these places, and I said, I think a lot of people think of Puerto Rico like they think of the Dominican Republic or Costa Rica. Well, maybe some people do excursions in those places that take them into the interior. But I think most people think of tropical island and beach, and that's the first place your brain goes. Like, I'm going to go to the beach.
Mhm.
You can spend a long time. I was going to say a week, but definitely more than that, exploring all these places that are nowhere near the beach in Puerto Rico, and they have their own unique flavor. Each town has their own little plaza. Obviously the food of Puerto Rico, the mountain views, and things like that. I'm not here to be the tourist board for Puerto Rico right now, Rob, but thank you for asking.
You've done a very good job. A cursory tourist board pitch. Thank you so much, Mr. Davis. Great to see some MK Ultras in the chat already this morning. Soccer Night in Detroit. Happy holidays. Same to you. Great weekend. The Celtic finally won. Yeah, Wilfred Nancy probably still in a job for at least for another day or so after getting his first win at Celtic. And we will talk about the Alumnify field on the show as well. And then Schmeltzer getting in here. I saw that Leao Labanta. Who's that? Leao Labanta.
She plays for the Kansas City Current, Rob. She's a U.S. international of recent vintage. I think she's one of the first players in a long time to make her debut after the age of 30, but she is an NWSL player, Rob.
All right, very good. So on today's show, we're going to talk about Detroit, some Cleveland, men's national team players and being on lists, and some of the mechanics of how Inter Miami are able to do what they're doing compared to LA Galaxy the year before. But if you are just tuned into the show for the first time, you can also see some of our other content offerings that we have put out. We are counting down a kickoff for the New York Cosmos, AC Boise, and Atletico Dallas. So if you haven't checked those out, please do so. Some great club building content there and lots of details, as well as some discussion on the MLS formats and many other topics. So, are you ready to get to the show?
Before we do that, shout out to Tulsa Mario, who is Puerto Rican, actually from the island, probably laughing at me for saying something stupid. It's possible. I don't know. But shout out to Tulsa Mario, one of our ultras. And then Ryan saying Vieques is beautiful. Vieques is one of the smaller islands that is part of Puerto Rico off the East Coast. So, yeah.
So Tulsa Mario, one of the only folks in this chat right now that can probably revoke your tourism board.
Yes.
Status.
He could be like, "Oh, Jason, why do you act like you're an expert? You're not." I'm clearly not. I'm just a guy, like I said, driving around the island with my wife, spending time driving mountain switchbacks the last couple days. So it makes you feel like maybe you know something, but it's an exploration, just like anything else.
All right, very fun. Let's get to it. Today's long balls here on Morning Kicker, and let's kick them. Big development here locally for me in the soccer world. The first big step, or the next big step in Detroit City FC's progress towards a new stadium. Ambitious timeline to knock down a giant old hospital and build a brand new soccer stadium got underway over the weekend. This, it's Southwest Detroit Hospital, sat abandoned for a couple of decades, and here they are over the weekend tearing it down. And in its place, by the start of the 2027 season, will be a 15,000 capacity Alumnify Field, the new home of DCFC.
Starting to feel real a little bit, I guess, for Detroit City fans. It's not it's not the stadium being open. It's not people, buying season tickets and picking their seats, or however Detroit City intends to do this, but it is a step towards that, right, Rob? We can say you got to clear out the old crap before you can build the new shiny, fancy stadium. And look, we cannot do enough. We cannot overstate how ridiculous it is that Detroit City started as an NPSL outfit playing short season amateur soccer with a bunch of college kids.
Less than 10 years ago.
I think it was 2012 that they launched. Rob.
But they were still summer amateur in like 17 or 18.
That's true. It's been a quick run from being amateur to this. You're absolutely right in that. They spent a couple of years, a handful of years being an amateur side, and then launched into let's be a pro side, and then let's also build a 15,000 seat stadium. We've talked about it before, the issue of whether or not you lose something in terms of the soul of the club when you take it from one place to another, when you change the character of the club in terms of how it operates. Like, I'm sure, I'm not trying to build a straw man here, but I'm positive that there are Detroit City fans who are still not happy that they went pro, that are still frustrated that the team changed from what it was in the very beginning, first at Cass Tech and then obviously in Hamtramck, to what it is now. But there are also lots of fans, I imagine, who think this is amazing, and I've been along for the ride. And, of course, also what's going to happen now is there's going to be a wave of newcomers, Rob. There's going to be a whole lot of new Detroit City fans coming online now into 2026, ahead of 2027, once the stadium opens. They've never had to draw 15,000 per game. So there's going to be a wider net cast for the kind of people they want to sell tickets to in Detroit. And that's going to change what Detroit City is. Whether they can hold on to the soul of the club from the very beginning, what that was when a couple of guys, 5 guys from Detroit and Amateur Soccer League got together and launched an amateur team that was playing high-level soccer and selling tickets and selling beer out of decommissioned containers or whatever they were doing. Like, whether they can hold on to that is the part I am most fascinated by. And I'm not saying they won't do it. I'm just going to stand here as a neutral and watch it happen.
Yeah, well, it is an exciting time because what could be and what still is right now. So what's happened now, at least for local Detroiters, at the very minimum, getting rid of this blight of this hospital, right? So just for Detroiters in general, that's a positive step forward.
Sure.
And then a quote here from Sean Mann, with the spokesman for the owners there. I think this is a very good point. And for those who've been to Detroit, you'll know. So for cars that drive by on I-75, we saw in that news clip, this is literally right off the highway coming into the city. This will ultimately be the biggest billboard for soccer that the region and the state has ever had. So instead of a blighted, crumbling building, a soccer-specific stadium in Detroit, in a wonderful area, an area that's already being rejuvenated. The train station that was closed for like 80, 90 years got reopened this past year. And it is in an area that could well become a kind of a jewel for the city. But going back to your point of adding more people to sell to. So even when DCFC moved to Hamtramck, they were already somewhat bursting at the seams and looked like they could add capacity already. So one thing that going to this area, so this new stadium is in Southwest Detroit. And one of the neighborhoods in that area is literally called Mexican Town. And so a lot of the general, this is some generalizations, but the suburban crowd that goes to games in Hamtramck and has been supporters up to this point, I believe will follow to the new stadium for the most part. If they're willing to go from the suburbs to Hamtramck, I believe they would be, they would gladly go to this stadium. But also, if they are able to, if moving to this neighborhood, literally called Mexican Town, if they're able to add that community that has its own mini soccer microcosm, that has all its own amateur leagues, and you go on the weekends in the parks in that neighborhood, they have their own microcosm of leagues and supporters and its own soccer world that I don't know if they had made that migration to fully embrace Detroit City SC as their team. So if they could add that moving into that neighborhood could be at least some of that gap of that new population that you're talking about selling to.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I don't think they're going to have a problem attracting people to games, at least not initially. I mean, there's going to be new shiny object effect happening. And by the way, I've used the MK Ultras map to zoom in here on the area of Detroit. This is Mexican Town. Right there in the middle, you can see my cursor is kind of over the top of the name of Mexican Town. So this is off of I-75, but south of I-75, if my understanding is correct. Is that right, Rob? I don't actually have
it's right off Michigan Avenue, so that's the diagonal street. A lot of them are obviously diagonals, but it's just west of Corktown. So it's in that.
It's in this.
So so it's in between Mexican Town and Corktown. So go up just a little bit. Right. Yeah, it's right there in that corner.
There it is.
is
Actually,
where the
it's
hospital.
already, they've already put a dot on it on Google Maps. Alumni Field construction site. So it's right there. I see what you're saying.
So between
Mexican
there
town.
and east is literally already a populated area with bars, restaurants, that new train station building, and then towards the downtown area. So it'd almost be an end cap towards that stretch going across the screen there on Michigan Avenue.
Yeah, look,
so it's really going into a great area that could, Thomas put it in the chat. There's no, like, obviously it's not a home run. Obviously you're going to adopt that Latin Mexican fan base, but it sure is an opportunity. And if there is an area to try to widen your hug, widen the tent, so to speak, that's a great area to put it.
Well, I mean, look, they're going to be in Detroit, right? They're going to be in a vibrant, densely populated area that can bring a character to this stadium for Detroit City. They already had that in Hamtramck, although I think you and I have talked about how kind of disconnected from the people of Hamtramck the game sometimes felt because of the community. Well, I don't want to get into any assumptions about that, Rob. I'm just saying, like, as you move forward in your evolution as a club, and I think it's important to point out that, yes, like, I'm not saying they should have stayed an amateur side playing in a high school football stadium. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying they should have been a pro teams playing in a high school football stadium and doing what they did in Hamtramck at Keyworth. I'm saying that there will be a knock-on effect, and it doesn't have to be bad, but it is a thing that the club has to think about as they move forward. So I'm looking at this from our Ultra Chris. If a team doesn't evolve, time will pass them up and they will decay. There are a few legacy 10-year plus USL2 teams that are looking shaky because they haven't evolved and lost their fandom. Exactly. Like, you can't, like, remember we were celebrating Vermont Green? Yeah. Right, they won the league. They had all this stuff, exciting stuff happening around the team. They seem so organic. Obviously, like, even up a level, Portland Hearts of Pine, like, so much excitement in Portland. We reviewed the documentary series Up the Hearts that they've done in Portland to celebrate that. Like, we talked about all those things. Those things are not guaranteed to last forever. Right, those things are exciting for the moment. They give you a platform. They say that they show you that soccer can succeed in those towns. But we've seen before clubs burst onto the scene, drive a lot of interest, and then slowly decline into, well, they're kind of just there. Even if they don't collapse, even if they don't fold, even if they still remain a part of the American soccer scene, that idea that they're just going to sort of always be like filling up their stadium, it's always going to be vibrant, it's always going to be exciting, is not something you can take for granted.
Yeah, how long does the lightning in the bottle last? DCFC, lightning in the bottle, Vermont and Portland, they've all got something and they've harnessed it and rode with it. And yeah, does it dissipate, or do they continue maybe adding a little bit of nitrous to that bottle of lightning that they've collected? We shall see.
What happens when you put nitrous in a bottle of lightning? Are we doing like Mr. Wizard? That's how old I am. Are we doing Mr. Wizard here? I guess Mythbusters maybe could take. Who else is doing science experiment? Bill Nye, the science guy. Can we get any of that?
If not nitrous, how do you extend lightning? I guess
can we cross pollinate with a content creator who's doing experiments on YouTube?
Now that would be fascinating. If we go 3 wide box with a science experiment in the third box, that would be pretty cool. Any science soccer nerds out there, reach out to morningkickaround@gmail.com for any of that.
I do think that one thing we want to do here, and we do have a little bit of a relationship. I've interviewed Sean Mann, I don't know, dozens of times over the past 15 years or so, and I actually went out to Detroit and attended a Detroit City FC game before they went pro, when they were playing in Hamtramck at Keyworth as an amateur side. Got the lay of the land, hung out with those guys a bit, got to broadcast from one of the brew pubs in Detroit. And I would love to do something like we're doing with Countdown to Kickoff, but for the new stadium. So, I'm just speaking this into existence. We don't have anything going on yet with Detroit City, but if this gets back to them, then maybe Sean and the crew will decide to hook up with Morning Kicker on. That would be cool.
That would be great indeed. Definitely something worth following at the very least. Shifting directions, going a little bit east to Cleveland. We featured what's going on, how are they going to dot the map in Cleveland, and it's unclear yet, with multiple parties trying to get in on there. MLS Next Pro and USL Championship both having bidding groups, but the news here on the MLS Next Pro side showing that they are delaying the release of their branding.
Yeah, it says brand designs locked in, names chosen, colors finalized. The big news this week, we officially finalized our team names, design, and color. The honest part, we won't be launching the brands in 2025 as we originally planned. The end of the year came way too fast. And then they described this as something with an upside. Instead of a staggered rollout, we'll be launching brands and kits together ahead of the spring soccer season. And by the way, this is because they have an MLS Next Pro team launching, but also a Women's Super League club, or is it a WPSL club? I have to double check that. Just in time for the gear up for club play in 2026 and the Men's World Cup. We'll continue to plan our launch and be in touch with opportunities to attend events, preview kits, and even be part of the photo shoot. Stay tuned. WTPSL Pro is what Chris is informing. That sounds right.
Thank you, Chris.
So, is this the right thing to do for? Would you rather them hold off and maybe use the beginning of the year as a launch pad, or is it kind of like, maybe something went wonky here? Maybe they didn't have their dunks in a row. Like, if you're a potential Cleveland fan, are you worried by this, Rob?
I wouldn't say it's encouraging. Having, false promises is not a good way to get people on board. Saying that you're going to release something and then say, whoopsie, well, maybe we're not ready for that. It doesn't exactly fill the heart with promise. And if they are going to start playing 2026 and they're not going to even talk about what they're called until that year, so you only have a 3-month lead in for what you actually are and what you actually are trying to be until 3 months before a season start. That's a tough pull. That doesn't seem like you have all your ducks in a row at all.
Well, okay. So to Mike's point, it's a good move. You don't need confusion, right? That's the idea between don't do staggered rollouts, right? If you've got one brand locked in, but you're not sure about the other brand, is it better to time them together so that everybody's like, oh, this is they're launching their men's and women's brands at the same time. I don't know if there's chatter on the ground about what any of this looks like. I don't know that there's any scuttle that says this is what they're going to go with in Cleveland. Something traditional, an FC branding, something like that. Is there going to be a mascot? Is there going to be a lake monster involved? Is there going to be references to history? Anything like we don't know any of that. At least I haven't seen it. If it's out there, then it's escaped my attention. Maybe there is something within the Northern Ohio fan base or something that they're tracking this. I guess one of the questions for me, Rob, is do you want the brands to be tied together? Is that the best approach to this? Should the men's and women's teams be sharing branding rather than having individual branding? And I know it's not the same because we're talking about WPSL Pro and MLS Next Pro, which are both, well below the top level of soccer in this country for their respective kinds of the versions of the game. But, when we talk about the NWSL, sometimes we talked about it recently with the salary issues and Trinity Rodman and this new HIP hip rule, whatever. You get into this thing of, should NWSL teams, not should, but NWSL teams are individual brands unto themselves. They are not connected to men's teams. Maybe shared ownership has happened. A lot of times it's been split up, like in Portland, but you have individual brands. Whereas over in England and in France and Germany and place Spain, where they're playing high-level women's soccer also now, they're investing in the game. You get Chelsea and Arsenal and Barcelona and teams like that. And it has become this attraction for maybe players, but it's also that thing of if you're a Chelsea fan, you buy one shirt, maybe there's a women's version, but you buy one brand to support both teams. Whereas here, if you're a fan of the men's team, you're buying a different thing to support the women's team.
I mean, obviously I can understand the appeal of attaching yourself to an existing brand. You can fast forward a couple decades or centuries if you just become a part of the bigger club. But I like the independent club approach. Honestly, I kind of like the ability to stand alone. It is a club unbeknownst to itself, and it's not necessarily a subsidy, or at least accused of being a subsidy of the men's side. But I can understand the appeal of fast forwarding, using that brand appeal of a Liverpool or a Chelsea or an Arsenal.
Yeah. Well,
but at the same time, but here in this instance, there is no set brand, so there really isn't much of an upside to not standing on your own.
We don't have legacy brands or legacy clubs like Liverpool, like Chelsea, like Arsenal, like Barcelona that will then pull forward the interest in the women's game, right? So, I guess it's kind of akin to big time college sports, right? It's like you're a fan of this football team and you're a fan of the basketball team, and that they're under the same heading. They're representing the same community in a direct way. And even if you have two teams representing the same community in American soccer, they have different branding. They are different things. They feel different and separate from one another. And even if there's fan crossover, you will have plenty of people who say, I'm a fan of the women's team, but not the men's team. Or I'm a fan of the men's team, but not the women's team. You don't have Ohio State fans or Michigan fans going, I'm a fan of Michigan football, but screw the basketball team. That doesn't happen. Or even men's and women's basketball. Like, I'm a fan of the men's basketball team, but not the women's basketball team. That's not a thing. So I just think that is interesting. There are a couple of other things here. Well, let's get Chris in here first. I'm pro men's and women's being almost identical, but ever so slightly different. I want the opportunity to support and rep the WOSO team directly, which I know I'm in a minority with that opinion. So ever so slightly different, I think, is very difficult to pull off. And obviously, again, here, what you have are individual investment tracks. You don't have, it's Chelsea saying, oh, we're going to support our women's team and put money into that. And we own that. Even though right now, I think there's an example of split ownership with branding, like in Lyon, where Michelle King now owns the women's team, and that's separate from the men's team. Generally speaking, you get Chelsea owns the men's team and the women's team. And I think they've, some of the shenanigans Chelsea has pulled off in terms of PSR has been to maybe like shift ownership of something. I might be wrong. I know they sold a hotel to themselves in a weird way. So that may be a thing. But generally, what you've got here is MLS investors or men's soccer investors who are different from the women's soccer investors. I think Louisville's the only example of this. Am I mistaken? I think Louisville is the only example where it's, and now those are slightly different. To Chris's point, those are similar but different brands. Color schemes are the same, but names are different. I think that is interesting. And then Mike saying, kind of on a different question, MLS Next Pro independent teams cracking the code is still an enigma, not counting Chattanooga. So I guess he's kind of saying, in this Cleveland sense, can you be an MLS Next Pro team, which I don't think I'm wrong in saying is kind of a glorified reserve league, and have a strong independent brand? Can you do that? Carolina Core, are they pulling it off? And Carolina people would have to answer that question. We know Chattanooga is a team that existed well before MLS Next Pro and built themselves in a similar way to Detroit City. And so maybe they are the only one that stand out.
That's a good point. Shifting back a little bit, comparing the college fandom, there's a whole bunch of different teams under the same umbrella. And that's another parallel where the college fandom in the United States kind of parallels some of the things over in continental with soccer and how people gravitate towards it, because Barcelona having their women's team is a natural thing because they have all sorts of sports. It is literally a club. They have a basketball team, they have volleyball, they have swimming, all sorts of sports. So having a women's team, they've rose to prominence in the last decade, but they have a myriad of teams that all fall under the same umbrella. So that's not completely a departure. Not quite as much the case in England, but interesting thing to ponder. But I think in this case, with there not being many or any legacy brands, only thing that kind of came to mind that might be able to pull off the women's thing, we talked about Atlanta. They might have a brand. Or what about like Galaxy Women? Some sort of thing that might have enough of a branding to pull that off.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, this also tracks with my point about college sports. And I do see Chris is saying that there are people who say, I support the football team and not the basketball team, or the men's this but not the women's that. That I know that does happen. All right, I just think in general, if you are a fan of Ohio State, you are supporting the athletic programs of Ohio State. You may not actively go to all the games. You may not watch the women's basketball team, but if they make the Final Four, you're going to be right there going, go Buckeyes, right? For the most part. But one thing that happened in women's sport is that idea of the blah, blah, blah women, or the lady this, or whatever, right? That was a thing. And I don't know if it diminished. This is, again, why I'm okay with NWSL teams being completely independent branding of their own, because then you don't have that issue of like, the Sounder women, right? The Sounders, that's weird. You would just say the Sounders. And again, like it's always context dependent, because when we talk about the WSL and you're saying, oh, there was a game today, you say Arsenal Chelsea played. you don't say the Arsenal women play the Chelsea women unless you're talking to somebody who maybe needs that context to understand that it's not Arsenal and Chelsea. But of course, what that says is that you're always entering that conversation from the men's side of it. You're always saying, if you say Arsenal, Chelsea, the presumption is men rather than women. So you have to explain that it's women. And then that gets into, like, again, is that the right way for women's soccer to be supported?
Yeah, stand on its own two legs. And that's, in my mind, the thing that we'd want to see over the long run. Shout out to our Ultra Spotlight, George, aka Simply Dope. Thank you so much for your support of Morning Kick Around, both on these live shows and the Morning Kick Around Discord server. A wealth of information and a great conversationalist amongst the great and very resourceful and knowledgeable folks that we have in the MK Discord. There's a great mix right now in there of folks that have a long history and a lot of knowledge, and then folks that are really trying to learn it. Yeah, learn the landscape as well. It's really a lot of information exchanging going on in the Discord.
I think that's one of the things I like, is that there are people in there saying, I don't know about this. Can somebody explain it to me? And again, I think even those of us who are very, very, very into soccer and up to our necks in it most of the time, you can't know everything, right? You just can't know everything. So if I have a question about the soccer scene in a certain part of the country, that's what we're doing with the Dotting the Map. We're saying, hey, these people are experts, or they are on the ground in those places, and they are probably going to know a lot more about soccer in, say, Oklahoma or Florida or Texas or whatever than we do, living thousands of miles away. And so if there is, especially as the map gets dotted by clubs, Rob, when we hear, like, there's a new club in Texas, somebody can say, well, that's a club that will succeed because of this, or maybe won't because of, here's the challenge that they have. There's a club down the road. This is 8 hours from their biggest rival, potentially. Things that we maybe miss. I think we once upon a time had a geographical error about Texas because we just didn't appreciate how massive that state is. So that's one of the things I think I love about the Discord and about our Ultras.
Yeah, since doing this show, I've learned a lot about Texas and soccer in the Carolinas. We've learned a lot about that. And then also Chris-Al. I mean, I know my Michigan local soccer, but Chris, he's given us a lot of wealth of information on various lower league and summer amateur leagues. So become a subscriber, become an member. MK Ultras, great place to be to share your knowledge and to learn a little bit of knowledge as well. As far as members in the chat today, I play French horn, suggested for a female team, the Soundettes.
So bad. It's so bad. No.
What about this one, Chris? The Union Bells.
Union Bells. Yeah. Okay. I mean, I'm not against it, I guess. I don't know. It sounds like one of those peach tree league, whatever that was back in the
League of Their Own.
Peaches, the League of Their Own. Yeah, the women's baseball teams from the interwar era in the 40s. Yeah.
All right, moving along. Let's get into our big question of the day here on Morning Kick Around. Let's go. Welcome in Morning Kick Around. We are in the depths of the holidays and also MLS offseason, and teams are building their rosters, and a lot of conversation online between some like insiders, the MLS Extra Time folks like Andrew Wiebe, praising the work that Inter Miami has done, and commenters kind of pushing back, saying that there's some preferential treatment maybe going on, maybe some strings being pulled in the MLS offices to facilitate, this reloading that Inter Miami is having. And this kind of is a juxtaposition to what happened to LA Galaxy, where they went from champions to last place. So kind of the big question, how is Inter Miami doing this with their roster build?
Okay, well, let's before we get into the roster part of this, let's remember that the Galaxy's best player had a serious injury that kept him out all season long. I mean, it's impossible to ignore as a factor in why the Galaxy ended up where they did. Now, of course, there is that issue of the Galaxy were unable to retain or add the same way that it seems Inter Miami is already doing just weeks after they won the MLS Cup title. And I think it's natural in a league where there is strict salary budget rules where there is a structure that you're meant to follow, where there is this idea that rules exist and can be broken, right? We already do have history of teams getting in trouble for breaking rules, including Inter Miami not that long ago.
Yeah, distant memory.
A different version of Inter Miami, but nonetheless Inter Miami. And when you have that, you will always have reason for people to think some rules are being skirted if what's happening doesn't seem to line up with, again, the example we have from the LA Galaxy of last year. But, and there are experts in this who are really, really keyed in. Obviously, you will always go to Tom Bogert. Excuse me. I was going to say Paul Tenorio first, and Tom Bogert, the guys at The Athletic, who are tracking all these things and reporting on them for that website. I think Armin Kafai over at Footy Analytic Musings is a great resource on this. And he takes a look. And there are some things that are not transparent. This is another reason why conspiracy theory thinking is so prevalent, Rob, because we don't know exactly how these players hit the budget, right? We can only guess based on some things that are put out by the MLSPA and, again, some of the rules around this. So Armin, who I would love to get back on the show because I think we did have him talking about some budget issues months ago, said the giant question I've seen across social media is how Miami can afford its roster. It boils down to players taking discounts, come back to that, trades that they made in 2025 and what they can roll over. And maybe before we get to the discounts, Inter Miami has sold players, right? They've done things to bring them the GAM that gives you the flexibility within Major League Soccer. They sold Leo Campana to New England. They sold Robert Taylor, I believe, to Austin. They sold Drake Callender. All of those players brought GAM for the offseason for their moves. Also, obviously, Sergio Busquets and Jordi Alba retired, which opens up some things. And those players are an example, like Rodrigo Del Paul, who joined on a loan and was not a DP in 2025. Those are examples of players who are willing to take lower contracts, get paid less money than they would if they went to another European club for those European-based players because they want to play with Lionel Messi, because they want the Miami lifestyle, because for them this is an experience on top of just the job that they're doing. Lots of them have made enough money that they can say, you know what, I'm fine being paid less than I expect or less than I'm worth to be with Leo in Miami. I think it's kind of that simple, even if there are some details that are important about the mechanisms they're using to pull this off.
Yeah, like you said, some players taking some cuts. I definitely think that for the goalie, Dane St. Clair, that was confirmed that he took less money to go down there. I think that's really what kind of set a fire, obviously in addition to the DePaul signing, but them being able to sign the #1 rated goalkeeper in Major League Soccer definitely raised some eyebrows as how they were able to do that. And like you said, having the experience of being able to play with Leo Messi and have the Miami experience, that just is like experience marker. Check that off the list. Once in a lifetime experience. You don't get that call to come play with Messi every day. And then even if that's a short-lived thing, maybe a season or two, he'll always be able to say that. Plus, there's more chance of maybe some silverware and in future contracts having more money.
Let's take the example of Dane St. Clair, who just signed with Inter Miami after winning goalkeeper of the year in Major League Soccer for Minnesota United. Minnesota United, per the MLS rules, could offer the most to Dane St. Clair for his next contract, right? This is usually how in a salary cap league, this is usually how it works. The team that has your rights or who team you played for can usually pay more than anybody else because the idea is they have an opportunity to retain that player. And then if you go out on the market within the league, there are rules around how much you can be paid. It is undeniable, based on the timing of all of this and how it went down, that Dane St. Clair took less money to go to Miami. Now, there are some things about this that happened in Minnesota, and I'm seeing those Minnesota United fans on social media looking very frustrated by the fact that it seems like their ownership, their club, didn't offer Dane St. Clair his deal until too late. Basically, they waited. They didn't show him that they cared enough to give him that offer before the season ended. And so Dane St. Clair sitting there going, well, what am I going to do? Now, again, the reported offer is $1 million, which is more than he can make signing with Inter Miami. He is limited to how much he can make there. But if you're Dane St. Clair and you're young enough as a goalkeeper, he's still in his 20s. You're young enough as a goalkeeper that you can imagine yourself getting that opportunity to go overseas, leveling up beyond Major League Soccer. If those offers aren't coming in right now, if he's not seeing the kind of club he wants to play for in Europe come in right now, go play with Lionel Messi. Go get on that stage. Go be in that spotlight. Not only are you playing with the greatest player any of us have ever seen, you're doing it in Miami, which is a nice lifestyle. And again, like, there are opportunities to win trophies that Miami's going to have next year. They're going to be the MLS Cup favorite. And Dane St. Clair, you saw him in the playoffs chirping the Seattle Sounders, getting into the heads of those penalty kick takers. He is not a shy guy. I think my sense is that Dane St. Clair wanted the biggest stage possible within MLS, and of course Miami offered it. So that's, again, another bit of evidence that what Miami has going for it is a lot of things that other clubs just cannot pull. They just cannot leverage the GOAT and the lifestyle.
Yeah, so shout out to our supporter in the spotlight, George, logging in. Hello from the Caribbean. Hello to you, sir. Thanks for being on board with us and being an
That means he's got two of us in the Caribbean, representing the Caribbean right now. Shout out to George.
Hey, I mean, I'm not jealous at all. I mean, I love 22-degree weather. I mean, it's pretty sick. I don't know what you guys are trying to say. And then to that same point, Thomas saying the calendar switch only going to be more of an advantage for Miami. Don't freeze your patootie off playing through the winter up in the north. Come down to Miami.
This is like one of those things where the idea of parity kind of crumbles a bit. You can say we're going to enforce parity. We will have salary budgets. You will not be able to outspend other teams by multiples unless you're using it on one player, which is obviously the case in Major League Soccer, or two or three or whatever. Like, obviously, you're talking about rules meant to guarantee that every team has at least some hope of doing something in a season. Because what MLS is trying to avoid are fans drifting away from their teams because they look like no-hopers over a long period of time, right? We do not have the infrastructure of fandom. We do not have those connections as strong as they do in England when I don't know, a Bolton drops down the ladder and ends up in the third division or whatever, right? We just don't have that. So MLS has always maintained on some level that they want to have parity. Now, I see it in the chat. Parity was lost long ago. It is still nodded at, right? There's still a notional parity in Major League Soccer because of the salary budget. If you didn't want to have parity, then you would not have a budget the way it works. You would maybe have a cap, and maybe you'd have a soft cap, and then you'd have a luxury tax the way the baseball does, which is basically if you spend over our cap, you got to pay everybody else. That's the only way you get to do that. The Yankees do it every single year, right? They pay into the general fund because they want to spend more than the league says you're allowed to spend on your salaries. Major League Soccer, if they really weren't interested in parity, would have broken up the salary budget the way it exists right now. Although I do think they're kind of in their own heads about we got to add new features all the time, those kind of things, right? But you cannot account for markets being more attracted to a certain caliber of player than other ones. I mean, you can't legislate that. You can't make it so, oh, well, the LA's got an advantage and Miami's got an advantage. So any player who wants to sign there, whatever, they're only allowed to sign a 1-year contract instead of multiple years. Like, you can't, that's not fair, right? That doesn't sound like the way to approach this. So Miami is always going to have an advantage, even if Lionel Messi's not there. LA is always going to have an advantage. On some level, New York's always going to have an advantage. In fact, I saw that maybe the Red Bulls are on for Lewandowski. I don't think it's going to happen, but maybe the Red Bulls are in for Lewandowski or something like that. Like, those things are going to be out there because when a top caliber player, particularly from Europe, looks at MLS, are they going to go, you know what? I really, really want to play in Houston. No offense to Houston, but I really want to play in Denver. I really want to play in Columbus. I really want to. No, they're going to go, I want to play in those big famous cities because I want to live the lifestyle I saw in the movie that I watched last week.
That's a good point about the cities being able to recruit just for being who they are. But I think that one player can have a huge impact on it because Ache, obviously we saw his impact on the field put Houston in some relevance in the table. He's gone. They fall off a cliff. And then there was much more support and eyeballs on them. So I think that just getting a specific player can help you a ton. There's a comment up the chat a little bit talking about the same thing. If one of the New York teams was able to get a big player that had some gravity, that would kind of change their whole recruiting strategy in general. It's funny you mentioned Lewandowski. I saw that Chicago Fire was talking to Lewandowski. Curious what I don't necessarily believe that. He seems like a Saudi Arabia guy, maybe.
Really?
But
no, I think he's an MLS guy. I think he's an MLS guy.
Really?
I think he would be. I don't even think he'd be. I would think he would kill in Chicago. His role in Barcelona is changing. He's not the guy that he was a couple years ago. Who knows how many goals he would score in MLS? But obviously, with the Polish community in Chicago, I know that, and that feels like, man, that feels so cheap and so weird for us to be like, you know what they should do? Sign a Polish player. Of course, they did that 25 years ago, 30 years ago when they launched that club. Yeah. Had some Polish players, not on the level of Robert Lewandowski, who's the greatest Polish player of all time, but I think, obviously there's still some notion, there's still something to that. Ache in Houston is a good example, right? You obviously have a large Mexican-American community in Houston, Texas. If you sign Ache, is that going to boost you? And you want to combine ability to help you win with their star power. Now, and Lewandowski might not sell outside of Chicago, actually. You think about it, as great as he's been, he's not a world-famous name the way that Messi is or the way that Beckham was and things like that. There are a couple other comments in the chat that are interesting. This one, let's see, from D Parks. I'm somewhat distrustful that Miami's self-reporting their player compensation is all true, given that they were caught being untruthful about it 4 years ago. Now, obviously, look, there are contracts that MLS approves. Again, this is part of the single entity thing. Major League Soccer holds all the contracts. Even the DP contracts, they are seeing them, they are holding them. It's just that extra beyond the cap money that the club itself is responsible for when it comes to how the player is played. Okay, the player is paid. Are there shenanigans happening? Meaning, are there off-book payments happening? We just saw a massive scandal erupt in the NBA, which I haven't tracked for a while because I listened to several episodes of Pablo Torre's podcast about it. That's the NBA. Those players are making way more money than MLS players are. Way more money. And still there are shenanigans around bonus compensation outside of the salary constraints that they are given by the NBA. I think it would be naive to believe that every single contract that is, or the MLSPA reporting is all a player makes. Now, there have been MLS owners who have even gone public and said, this is not exactly what these players are making. This compensation is a guide. This doesn't include bonuses. There are other ways for players to make money that is outside the guaranteed compensation that MLSPA reports to us, Rob. As to whether or not there are other things happening, again, I don't want to just throw out allegations, but certainly it's possible. Of course it's possible.
Since people have been taking sports and soccer seriously, this has been the case that, guy makes X amount of money, but he also works at the owner's, textile factory. I mean, that sort of thing has been going on forever, and it probably isn't ending anytime soon, you'd think. Anything else in the mix for us today? This Chris brings up an interesting thing as far as the recruiting, is that there's a different way to how do you legislate away the real salary differences, like being in Florida compared to Toronto. Heavily taxed in Toronto, not nearly as much in Texas or Florida.
That's a good point, right? And this is all stuff that clubs have to find ways to deal with. I always think about Columbus and how good they've been for the last couple of years. And obviously, we're going to find out what the post-Wilfred Nancy period looks like for them. He did win on the weekend, so it looks like he's not getting fired. Not yet. He might get fired after the Old Firm, which I think is first of the year. But he's not. I don't think he's going back to Columbus. I don't think Isatal is going to bring Wilfred Nancy back to Columbus if he gets fired by Celtic. I think that's probably not a great look. So when you think about Columbus being good, right? The question is, could Columbus be good in a league without a salary budget, without the rules that MLS enforces? Could they be good the way that they've been? Is attracting players a thing they could do if there weren't salary budget rules in MLS that dictated how much they could pay certain guys? Obviously ambition is a major part of it, but also that is tied to your revenue. And if, even though Columbus has big money owners now, right, in the Cleveland Brown owners,
Mm-hmm.
even though that's a thing, business people, and I'm not trying to make excuses for them, I'm just telling you how they act. They don't generally go, oh, that business is bleeding money. You know what we should do? Throw millions of dollars at it. Like our sports team, whatever league, whatever sport, is bleeding money. We need to throw millions at it. You get the sense that in a place like Columbus, which is very popular within the community, but is limited by the size of the market, by their international, those kinds of things. And I know, again, single entity, you don't actually own the club, you own the operating rights, all that stuff. But if we think about them as a club, as an independent organization, the Haslams aren't going to say, let's go dumping money into it to succeed in a league where we feel like we have a massive disadvantage if it was opened up and you didn't have limits on how much you could spend. So, I mean, those are the things, the give and take that is at play here when we talk about MLS.
Yeah, there's the jokes out there about Wilfred Nancy, leaving Columbus and coming back before anyone noticing. Is there any rumors about who they're going to hire in Columbus?
Oh, no,
I haven't seen alternative candidates, so that leaves the door open for that sort of speculation.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that Yohan Dame left Columbus after being an assistant under Wilfred Nancy and is now going to lead St. Louis, was he a candidate for Columbus? Did they wait too long? Or did they not want Dame? Like, did they want him? That's a question, right? That's sort of continuity in terms of leveling up the guy that was working underneath the guy who was so successful in your club. I haven't seen anything about Columbus yet, so I'm kind of on the outs with that.
Yeah, interesting to see what happens in Columbus. Interesting to see, are they going to continue being like a top 5-10 team in the league that they have been over the last few years? Or are they gonna
Rob, we know this is MLS. This is cyclical. And this is why any team that manages to make the playoffs on a consistent basis is they're swimming upstream and they're achieving something that is incredibly difficult. I mean, we make fun of the Red Bulls for the fact they couldn't win a trophy during their run making the playoffs that finally ended. But the fact they made the playoffs every year, I know the format changes and there's 18 teams, and I know all that stuff. I know those are all caveats for how much success it actually is to make the playoffs every season. But there are lots of teams that couldn't do it. These things are cyclical. I will give you an example of DC United as a team that cannot dig out of the hole that they put themselves in. And they were the best team in MLS. They were the dynasty that started the league. And can you imagine DC United getting back up? No, but it doesn't mean it's impossible because, again, this is MLS and these things are cyclical. Unless if parity really kind of is out the window in some meaningful way, we are now watching a stretching of the haves and have-nots in Major League Soccer, and it really is becoming a league that's going to be dominated by big market teams and by teams that are more attractive than others for whatever reason, like an Inter Miami.
Would you say now teams are able to recruit more on the locality, more on an individual basis than ever before?
You mean that the local, the identity of the club and the locality that they're in? I think MLS is, in terms of how these clubs have started to look from outside, that is different than it was 15 years ago when a lot of teams were kind of the same, right? It felt like the league was very, very, very parity driven. And even if you had a Galaxy who stepped up with, the three-headed monster of Keane, Beckham, and Donovan and won some things, you never got the sense that they were so far ahead of everybody else, right? You put that on Bruce Arena being a great coach. You put that on a couple of very good players who helped push them, and like identifying talent and, using not Moneyball tactics, but certainly tactics that were in order to recruit, like, undervalued players and we can stretch our dollars. And maybe that's not so much the case anymore, right? I still think you need to do that. And again, Miami's roster, despite all the star power, is an example of an MLS team being very smart in how they recruited around the edges of their roster budget, right? They used what they could to get players either on loan or younger players that could help them win games. That ability to identify players who are good enough to elevate an MLS team beyond just their DPs, that's the thing that makes you successful or not. And again, it's a different thing in the regular season, sorry to pick on Mike Thomas, than it is in the postseason. Philadelphia's a good example of that. Incredible recruiters for players who can help them win regular season matches over the last decade. But what they have not yet been able to do is win that trophy that kind of validates everything that they do in terms of not spending big on DPs and on flashier players.
We've got a few moments left of the live show today, so if anyone has any questions in the chat, please put those forward. Do a little Q&A to round up the show today. Thank you to all of our subscribers and our MK Ultras. If that button is not highlighted for the subscribe, hit that subscribe button now. If you want to step up your support for the show, become an MK Ultra. $3 a month gets you on screen comment priority, bonus content, access to the Morning Kick Around Discord server. There we have our MK Ultras dotted on the map, and we are creeping. I think we're up near 90 members, and we've got less dots than that. So if you haven't got your dot on the map yet, send us your coordinates, or at very least your area or town that you live in. We don't want you to necessarily put your street address out there on the internet, but definitely let us know where you're at so we can put the MK Ultras on our map. As we look for some questions to come in, got a couple American abroad notes. No Pulisic in the top 100. Do we care for the Guardians list of top men's 100 players?
It's annoying to me. I don't get it. I think he's been really good in 2025 at various points. I mean, maybe skipping international duty over the summer impacted his standing, although you get the sense that a lot of those voters, especially those based in Europe, really don't give a shit about the Gold Cup and such. It is annoying. It feels wrong on some level. These things though, they're so subjective. Rob, the fact that Scott McTominay is now a top 10 player in the world is just kind of mind-boggling. If you were paying attention to the end of his Manchester United run and what he's done at Napoli, like that is what is going on there. How did he get so good? But obviously that's a circumstantial. I'm not saying he's not good, but I'm saying clearly the circumstance has benefited him playing at Napoli in Serie A. And maybe Pulisic is taken for granted on some level in that regard, even though he's been Milan's best player for a while. Just mildly frustrating.
Yeah, I'm looking at this list, trying to see what other AC Milan players are on there. Because like you said, I mean, Pulisic, the top player for AC Milan, maybe, I mean, if you really wanted to parse maybe at least at the very minimum, top 3 AC Milan player. But the Guardian top 100 male players, Ousmane Dembele, Lamine Yamal, Vitinha, Mbappe, and Harry Kane. And then followed by, here's 6 through 10, Erling Haaland, Hakimi, Rafinha, Salah, and Pedri. And so you could argue that I would put some players higher. I definitely am surprised to see Mo Salah in the top 10.
So here's where your beef is. If you're a fan of Pulisic, a fan of, I would say a fan of Milan, a fan of the U.S. men's national team, Rafael Leao was 91. And Christian Pulisic didn't make the list. And why is Rafael Leao viewed to be a better player than Christian Pulisic based on the fact that Christian Pulisic has been better for Milan than Rafael Leao? That's where I would go, what's happening here?
Yeah, I mean, this is a popularity contest, and I'm very skeptical of anything that is voted on or judged based. I mean, this is a bit of a tangent, but X Games, love all those crazy competitions, but they're all judged. And someone else's opinion on it is a hard way to pick out a winner. And so this is someone's opinion, someone's vote. I mean, because Florian Wirtz is in the top 50, and I'm a Liverpool guy. I mean, consider at least the Liverpool part of his 2025. I wouldn't put him on any top lists.
That's the price. I mean, again, there's some lag here. I don't know how much it is, but the price tag on Florian Wirtz makes him higher on that, puts him higher on that list, because there's sort of a natural human reaction you can understand. Yeah. Like, oh, they paid that much for Florian Wirtz. Well, he must be one of the best players in the world. And then he has not shown up at Liverpool the way that he did at Leverkusen. And is that because the Premier League is so much more difficult? Is it because the pressure is higher at Liverpool? Is it because Florian Wirtz wasn't as good as we thought? It's impossible to know. So you're again subjectively deciding as you write out your ballot if you're doing this.
Christian Pulisic, top scorer for AC Milan at the moment. 7 goals on the season with 2 assists, where Leao has 5 goals as well, and less than 2 assists at the very least. And in one of the weirdest careers, probably, at least for that I can think of at the top of my head, Weston McKennie, obviously United States men's national team stalwart, always seemingly on the edge of the squad at Juventus, but hitting 200 appearances and is currently their second longest tenured player, which is just bizarre.
There's the weird thing around Weston is that the perception is he's only there because Juve hasn't found better players. Like there should be better players there in the midfield at Juve or on the wing at Juve, but they don't have those players, and that means that Weston McKennie has to play, and he's like a decent placeholder, but he's not actually a good player. And I think I'm not sure psychologically what's going on there, but I do think a lot of it is, again, a perception of he's not obviously great in a way that, say, I don't know, like, he doesn't do things individually the way some players who make these lists do, right? He's not obviously you've got top goal scorers on the list. You've got players like Lamine Yamal who use that left foot and cut inside and do all these magical things and can set a ball up for a teammate in a way that is obviously, visually very impressive. But Weston McKennie's a very good soccer player. I mean, as frustrated as I am that Pulisic's not on the list, I am not all that frustrated that people don't rate McKennie because
they don't even rate him at their own club.
Well, that is frustrating in the sense that you don't want him to lose his spot because there's this sense that he's replaceable. But clearly he's not. If he's got 200 appearances, he's the second longest tenured player at Juve, and every single manager who comes through at Juve goes, you know what? Yeah, Weston. I got to play Weston. I got to find some spot for Weston.
And it's wild. It's not like, oh, he's like battled his way through professionalism. Like he's been, slighted for his fitness, like not necessarily having the right weight. He's not always ingratiated himself to the local culture with his takes on food and whatnot. Like he's done so many things that wouldn't say like, oh, he's the ultimate professional, keeps his head down, does all this stuff. Or, he's a robotic with his training methods and he comes in and out. Okay, if someone's not a super soccer head, what would you say is his standout quality? What does he stand out?
Well, okay, as? I think he's a very good soccer player. I think he's more technically capable than people maybe give him credit for. I also think he is almost a world-class level athlete. Like I think he is just an incredible athlete. And what I mean by that is I don't mean like he's the fastest or he's the strongest. What I mean is that it comes I don't know how to describe this in exactly what I mean, but I always said this, like if Weston McKennie didn't play soccer, if he hadn't gone to Germany with his dad when his dad was stationed there and he hadn't picked up soccer, become obsessed with the game he would have been at least an all-state quarterback in Texas. Like at least he would have been a top recruit to play college football somewhere with his stature, with his physicality, with his athleticism. He does the long throws. It's very easy to imagine him throwing touchdown passes as well. He is just an excellent athlete. And I think that means that's what part of the reason he is so adaptable and why coaches say, well, I need a guy to play wingback. Oh, Weston, I need a guy to play in the middle of the field. Weston, I need a guy to play underneath my forwards. Weston, if he doesn't have somebody better, Weston McKennie is always the best option. And again, that means it's kind of sucks for Weston because he's being moved around because he is a Swiss Army knife. But it's also a credit to Weston that every manager at Juve says, I need my Swiss Army knife.
Yeah, he wins them over eventually. He's nice once you get to know him, sort of a thing.
I think his personality maybe is a thing too. Like he's not a shy kind of dude. He is out there. He's always talking. He's telling people to put ranch on pizza. He's making weird dishes that the Italians gag over. It's, that's part of who Weston is, which I appreciate about him. And I don't know that he would be in a better spot if he was a head down robot, because I think he's more than justified in selling himself or just being who he is. But maybe that's being as American as he is, because he's an American ass dude, hurts him sometimes initially with coaches.
We got one more note as far as Americans abroad, but do want to bring in and celebrate Dave Townsend for becoming a member of the channel. Welcome in. Thank you for supporting Morning Kick Around. Where are you at? If you are still watching, throw your dot of the map into the mix here. I'd love to know where you're watching from. That was an accidental button push, but some obvious misses and additions to court. I don't know what that's.
It's about the top 100. The Guardian top 100 is what he's saying.
Okay, so one final note. We are getting to that time of the calendar where injuries could severely impact World Cup 2026. And unfortunately, Tyler Adams, the little midfielder who could, gets an MCL tear. And he is facing a few months out, unfortunately.
So this is bad. We're not going to pretend that tearing your MCL is a good thing. Nobody should. But it is not too much of a leap to say there is a silver lining that now Tyler Adams will essentially be resting for 2 to 3 months going into 2026 in the calendar year that brings the World Cup. Now, he has to heal completely, and he has to be back to his full fitness and form for him to be what we need him to be for the World Cup. But I think you can see that based on the current science and the way that recoveries for MCL tears happen, that, he should be okay. Now, is there some rust, as Mike Thomas is pointing out? Absolutely, you have to be concerned about that. 100%. You have to be concerned about that. And I hate the way this sounds, but if you're going to do it now. Like, if you're going to tear your don't tear your ACL. That'll keep you past the World Cup. That'll keep you out too long. But if you're going to tear your MCL, okay, do it now. And then you get back on the field, and you should be, again, at least at a point where your fitness is getting up and ready for the World Cup coming up in June.
Yeah, but it's just disappointing that there's now going to be a race for fitness, so to speak, with Tyler Adams, which seems to always be the case with the summer tournaments. Is Willie, won't he? And we're back in that same situation. Shout out back to Dave, our brand new MK Ultra, coming to us from York County, Maine. How many Mainers we got out there? I think, is that number 2?
I think that's number 1. I don't have anybody. Well, I don't have anybody dotted yet. So let me see if I can, let's go ahead and see if we can do this right now. It will put, hold on. I gotta do this. And then I think how do we do this again, Rob? I got to find York County, I guess, is what I do.
Adding a dot. I think you just
there's a process that I'm missing. These are the actual ultras as I search here. So no results because I'm not searching. Maybe it involves
just a plus sign somewhere.
Oh, you know what it is? I'm in. I don't know why I can't edit the map right now, but there it is. There's the button. It says edit. Rob, why didn't you tell me to push the button that said edit?
I don't have my old man reading glasses on. It's all very fuzzy in front of me right now.
Okay, so there we go. I typed in York County. I'm going to hit York County, Maine, and boom, there we go. Somewhere around looks like Sanford, Maine, and so we will add our new Ultra Dave. That's his name, right? I got that right? His name is Dave?
Yeah, Dave Townsend.
Dave Townsend. So you're going to go in here as Dave Townsend, like that. And now we have Dave on the map. So I think that is our first one, Rob, the first Maine dot down there near Portland. It's actually down bottom of, I don't know anything about Maine geography, okay? So don't come at me if I say something wrong about describing, where this is in Maine. But this doesn't look like it's too far from the New Hampshire border. So southern Maine, John Stark is telling me. And we got two York counties because George, our ultra of the day, our spotlight is from York County, South Carolina. So we got 2 York counties. There you go.
Beautiful stuff. Thank you so much for joining the movement and dotting the map with us here on Morning Kick Around, Dave. Much appreciating the support, and thank you all for joining us here on this holiday week live show. Be sure to follow the Countdown to Kickoff series. And then any other Morning Kick Around content, check the channel. We got a whole plethora of videos for you to watch.
Yeah, I see that people are really responding to our discussion about MLS divisions, which we did last week. As that news trickled out, I think there's like 75 comments, maybe more, on that video, and it's getting some views. Jump in there. But obviously, also, we did what I think is our best episode of Countdown to Kickoff so far, and it was on the kit design process for AC Boise out of Idaho. Go watch that video. I'm a little surprised it hasn't done better. And maybe what I suggest people do is to share it somewhere, because I think it does give a little bit more of a look into how these clubs, particularly these USL clubs that are jumping in, what they're doing around their jerseys and how they're designing things and what they're thinking about when they go, we've got to make a first impression visually. How do we do that?
Yeah, it's a great episode. And for the kit nerds out there that want to hear the behind the scenes of what the club kit designer and the relationship to the manufacturer and kind of what the options were available and kind of that cooperation between the club and the designer. And then also in that is we have like a fast moving scroll of all the alternate designs that the designer made. And I really like that. Like, so many different little details that they changed over through the few months of the process of designing. So any kit nerds out there, definitely recommend that and support that. These clubs, we want to give them, kind of reciprocity. We're trying to find out more about their process and dig into their path to becoming a pro team on the field, and in as many eyeballs on that as possible, does us some good, and those brand new clubs good, because we want to see them all flourish, right?
Absolutely.
All right, I think that does it for the day. Thank you to all the questions. I saw a USL 2 related question. Maybe that will be for another episode. And then we will be back on Wednesday, right? Christmas Eve.
Have we committed to that, Rob? We should have talked about this before the show. Can we say TBD on Christmas Eve? It's a possibility. Stay tuned.
How about we publish a video live or not? TBD.
Okay, sure.
Chris. All right, guys. Thanks for joining. Thanks to our new members. Thanks to George in the spotlight for the day. And then until we return, everybody enjoy your soccer.